Welcome to Business Talk with Meghan McNulty, the podcast that takes you behind the scenes of business success and reveals the strategies, insights, and stories that drive these professionals to thrive in the ever-evolving world of business. Whether you're an established entrepreneur, a seasoned business owner, or simply fascinated by the world of commerce, this podcast is your front row seat to learn from the best. Each episode, Meghan will bring you engaging interviews with professionals from diverse industries who will share their triumphs, lessons learned, and the insights they've gained along the way. Hi, Cody. How are you?
Hey, Meghan. Thanks for having me.
I know. I'm so excited to talk to you today. I'd like to start with telling everybody listening a little bit about you. So if you don't mind, we're talking to Cody Cerny today. Did I say your last name correctly?
You got it.
Okay. Has worked as the chief of staff for a world-renowned expert in performance and leadership based in London. In this role, he created and implemented onboarding management systems and was responsible for organizational strategy and structure across Europe, Asia, and North America. He worked closely with stakeholders and built a culture that was rooted in integrity and performance. Prior to his previous role, Cody spent 9 years in combat, search, and rescue in the United States Air Force Special Operations. During this time, he planned and executed missions in coordination with various military organizations. As a pararescue helicopter team leader, Cody was an advisor to 7 countries as a technical rescue and medical instructor. In 2014, Cody was awarded Para-Rescue Man of the Year for the 48th Operations Group. Wow, very interesting. So with that, I'd like to kind of get started and talk about, how did you get here? And can you tell us a little about your experience in the U.S. military?
Yeah, so all my life I've had a fascination and interest in how much I could push myself. When I was 20, I actually moved to Tokyo and did a year-long intensive martial art course in Aikido. So that was 5 days a week, 7 hours a day of trying not to get knocked out.
Wow.
And so through that experience, I wanted more. And I knew some other veterans who had mentored me growing up. And I was really interested in how they approach the world and how they deal with problems. They seem to have this edge to them that had them be really effective in life. So I was interested in that.
Okay.
And I knew I didn't want to, kick down doors for a living. I was really interested in how do I develop myself in being the best in the world at rescuing people. And the pararescue, it's the Department of Defense's only dedicated asset to combat search and rescue. So we deploy with Navy SEALs, with Special Forces, then on the ground with the Rangers, and then other unique groups we get attached to as their combat search and rescue specialists.
Okay.
So it's a lot of medical training, a lot of confined space and technical rescue using ropes. Using other, mechanical equipment to get people out of really any sort of bad situation they find themselves in.
Wow, crazy. So if the special forces are going in, you're also like with them to help extradite, is that the right word? People out of dangerous, extricate people out of those types of situations.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I had I think a pretty unique career, during my time, I'm in Afghanistan, Iraq. I saw some things in North Africa.
Wow.
I got to play a tiny little role in the Bin Laden raid in 2011.
Okay.
So I'm very fortunate.
Wow. Can you tell us more about that situation?
I was attached to a unit that would only be deployed if something very bad happens to the aircrafts and things on the raid. We were called a QRF, so quick reaction force.
Wow. And one did go down, yeah.
But we weren't required, so so we didn't go.
So interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
I love that. So the U.S. military experience was obviously very impactful in your life. How did you kind of get to your next stop, and what are you doing now?
And so I got to a point in my career where, I was among one of the best at rescuing people. And kind of the next evolution that I saw myself in, that I was curious about, is how do I train and develop myself to now work for large organizations, to now work for government entities or governments, now work for communities or businesses that are, not in good shape, that are in breakdown.
Okay.
And that was kind of generated my actually going to work for a philosopher in London after I separated from the military in late 2015.
Interesting. Okay, so now you're working with this philosopher in London. What did you do? What were you working on? What did you do for him?
Well, I ended up becoming his chief of staff.
Okay.
So that's managing ultimately like a lot of his life. So supporting him in setting up meetings, in making sure the travel logistics are taken care of.
Okay.
He was working on a bunch of different projects, writing projects, and also the hiring and firing of staff.
Wow.
The training of staff, and working with this individual who, that job was one of the toughest things I'd ever done.
Okay. The working for the philosopher, not the military?
Yeah.
Hi.
Because it was way outside my comfort zone.
Okay.
I could do the physical stuff, be in, physical harm and, have a ruck on my back and, do all that. But when it came to my actual now having to lead a team who are dispersed across different time zones and continents.
Yeah. Wow.
And this individual, this philosopher I was working for, was one of the most unreasonable people I've ever worked with. He was very precise. He wanted things in a very particular way.
Okay.
He was very exact in his communication. And that's what had it be so difficult for me.
Okay. So you're working for the philosophy. I'm just curious, what is philosophy? Like, what is your definition of it?
Wow.
Sorry to put you on the spot.
That's
I'm just curious,
fine.
like philosopher. Okay.
I've got no education in philosophy,
Okay.
but philosophy for me, and this is Cody's definition, is taking on the fundamental questions of life. So what is knowledge? What is it to be a human being in the world? What is the actual source of performance? And it's that last, the source of performance, was what I was really curious on. Because again, having to go in and work in organizations, work in businesses, performance is what matters. And if I could, train and develop myself and getting to the source of that, I could be of value to businesses and organizations.
Okay. So you're really curious about performance, and then, top performers and elite individuals, what makes them kind of function and how they excel and execute this.
Yeah.
So I guess my next question would be, how do you expand one's performance limit?
Yeah, really great question.
Okay.
So you and I have no direct access to someone's actions. All performance is creating results that you want. And all results are a product of action. And you and I have no direct access to other people's actions. There's really no strings you can pull, and you can't actually make somebody do anything. So you can pay them money to do it. You can cajole them. You can plead with them. But at the end of the day, they're either going to do what you want them to do, or they're not going to do what you want them to do.
Unfortunately. Okay.
It's sort of a roll of dice. So action there's actually a level deeper than action, and that's who people are being that impacts one's actions. So you could say, how does the world occur for somebody? Because people are going to act wholly consistent with how the world occurs. So for you and I, as Westerners, when we see a door, we either push or pull.
Right.
My time in Japan, when you see a door, you either slide it left or slide it right.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So a door occurs for us in a particular way, and we automatically are thrown into that action.
Okay.
And even behind being, there's a thing called context. So the context is defined as the non-physical setting. You could also think of it as the background music happening in a movie. It's the thing that shapes and colors what's occurring for us. So if you're interested in affecting someone's performance, context is a really big lever to use.
Okay.
So as I said, we've got no direct access to people's actions, but we do have access to context, because context arises and it's constituted entirely by language.
Okay.
And if you can get your hands on the levers and dials of the language, you could say a language of performance, then you can start to impact who people are being, and then the actions they take, and finally the kind of results that are able to produce.
Okay.
And it's the same with ourselves. If I'm interested in wanting to increase my level of performance in a particular area,
Okay.
I got to start being really curious on, how does that area occur for me? And what is the context I have for that area? So we were speaking to a friend earlier today, Chris.
Yes.
And he wants to work on his public speaking.
Correct.
You can, be in your room and practice just speaking out loud.
Okay.
But he has a certain context, a certain view of public speaking that is not empowering for him. And if you're interested in increasing your level of performance, getting really curious on what is your context?
Right.
How are you seeing the situation?
Right. So how do you like, I guess, increase his ability to do the public speaking, or how do you like what internal conversation does he have to have in his context to get him to do the public speaking?
Yeah. Well, when we're working with the clients, we almost always start off with what we call the reveal. So that's not trying to do anything yet, but reveal what's currently in place for that individual, or what's currently in place for that organization. And if you're working again on the performance for yourself, or if I were to work with our mutual friend,
Right.
it would be having a conversation and finding out what is the context. Another way you could say that is, what is the background conversation that's shaping and coloring what's happening in the present? So what is he not talking about that's shaping and coloring the, how he sees public speaking?
Right.
And it could be, maybe he sees himself in a particular way as, not a public speaker.
Right. Interesting. So I have done 12 podcasts so far, and I have a good viewership, but I'm not exactly the best speaker yet. I have a lot of ahs,
Sure.
the whole thing. So I'm like, you know what, I'm gonna keep doing these for my audience and clients, and see, if I can get better. And I feel like I'm just, even though it's not perfect, I'm just doing it. How do I, how, like, look, I'm like kind of pausing like that. How do I, What would my context be to fix that situation, like to increase my performance level on interviewing or having conversations or public speaking?
Well, where you're at right now is firstly at a really great place, so congratulations.
Oh, thank you.
It's the actually seeing first possibility for your improvement to be there. If I'm going into an activity and I actually can't see a future of myself succeeding in that area, it's going to be real difficult.
Right,
It's going to be, a long road to hoe if,
yeah,
I can't see it.
Right.
And for you, you've got some commitment
right,
about your own development, about making, I think, a contribution to your clients.
right,
And so you've already gone a very long way. And I would say it's just going to take practice.
right, okay, okay,
One thing that I might recommend you do is what we call mirror work.
Okay.
And I practice this
okay,
in, delivery before I, go in front of a client or something. And that's standing in front of a mirror and saying what you're gonna say and delivering it to the person in the mirror,
okay,
to where the person in the mirror actually gets it.
okay,
And if you practice that, you'll probably start to get more awareness of your ums and likes.
right, okay.
And it's the practice that you're gonna have to.
That's a good
get
technique.
yourself around.
Thank you. Thank you. So let's take a step back. So you went from military, so high level at the military, to London with that situation sounds very interesting. We could probably talk more about that, what you learned from the philosopher.
Yeah.
And now your interpretation of philosophy. And then now brings you to, so London, now we are locally in California. So how do you get here now to California, and what are you
So
doing now?
right now I'm working for a management consulting firm called
Okay.
Insignum.
Okay,
And our parent company is called Elixir.
okay,
Insignium's been around for over 35 years. And we work with really executives from the world's best run companies. It's something like 25% of the Fortune 500 companies we've had the privilege of working with.
okay,
And it's working with executives who really speak to breakthrough, innovation, or transformation are
Okay.
imperative. And there's a different kind of consulting firms. There are, management consulting could really, be anything.
right,
So there are firms that come in and maybe do the project for you. There are firms that come in and maybe supplement your people, or they'll come in and teach you and educate. What Insignium does, and what I think makes us unique, is we actually catalyze the people in the organization. So it's us standing shoulder to shoulder with the people in the organization, supporting them in actually producing a breakthrough result. So after the end of the engagement, when we've left, the experience, the systems, the transformed ways of being it takes to produce an actual breakthrough in something all stays inside the organization. So we catalyze.
okay, fascinating. So if you come in and you're working with one of your clients, what like methodologies or frameworks do you typically use for business transformation projects?
Well, I'll talk about framework.
Okay,
If you're going to impact an organization, you've got to have a really powerful way in which to relate to that organization. Again, so you can get your hands on the levers and dials of the performance. And you could say that an organization is the people in that organization. You could say that the organization is the product they produce, or the capital assets, or the building or location. You could also say, if you're really interested to getting into what getting a powerful place to stand to interact with the organization, you could say that an organization is constituted by a network of conversations. It's what people speak about. You know, if an organization is talking about, you know, creating a widget, and there's a lot of conversation around better design or faster manufacturing, that is part of the network of conversations in that organization. We were working with a large healthcare system.
Okay.
And we were interviewing a lot of the people in that healthcare system. And for that healthcare system, you know, they said patient first. But when we were interviewing the actual people, we never heard the patient being mentioned.
Wow. Okay.
What were they talking about? Well, they were talking about finances and spending money.
Wow.
And that reflected very accurately the level of patient satisfaction in the organization, because it was very low, because people weren't talking about it.
Okay. So it's like, yes, we're patients first, but no, really the bottom line was you have to like kind of like get you're switching their framework around like, yes, obviously we have to, you know, have our finances in order, but it's about the patient. So how did you kind of, once you identified that and how they were talking about things, how does executive or management team correct that?
Well, it's to get everybody really clear what the current state is.
Okay.
You know, what's happening in the culture of an organization, because the culture is one of the biggest, I assert it's one of the biggest strategic assets that an organization has.
Okay.
And you could think of a culture as like a constellation of a number of things. So it's the stories people tell themselves about the organization. It's how people disperse the accountability. It's how responsible people are for the organization. It's a number of different things, but for people to get really clear, what is the current state, the good and bad? And that way people can own and they can take responsibility, you know, be able to see like, oh, that's right, I've got something to do with the unworkability in what's happening here. And I've also got something to do with what does work happening here. And when you can get yourself to that place, you can start to invent, you know, what do you want your culture to look like?
Okay. So you identify this for a company or the, you know, executive management team, and then you present this information. Is there like a next step that you guys take on with transforming the culture?
Yeah, and yes,
Okay.
and it could look a lot of different ways. And I'm not going to go into the full detail, but it's how we operate is getting people on the court. So what that looks like is actually having people work on projects that deliver a specific return on investment. And having those projects start to aspect of it. The other aspect is start to be a laboratory to test out what conversations you want to start having at work, to test out these new ways of being and acting, ones that will actually move the organization toward fulfilling, you know, whatever that organization is, you know, out to fulfill. So if it's a healthcare system, it's, you know, creating really great, you know, patient outcomes. If you're making widgets in a factory, having widgets being produced, you know, lower cost and better quality.
Okay. Okay. Can you give us an example of a successful business transformation project?
Yeah.
And the impact it had on the client's business overall?
Sure. We were working with a fast-moving consumer goods company, excellent company. It's been around for like 150 years. They make like household products, cleaning products. Really great company for putting products on the shelf. You could say they knew how to have a conversation about how to put products on the shelves at Walmart, on the shelves at Target. Their culture was also aligned with that. What they were having trouble with is e-commerce. So that's a whole different kind of conversation. That's a whole different kind of approach you have to have in the, development, in the, in the packaging, in how to communicate with your customers, and finally to communicate with the end users. So we were brought in, we're not experts in e-commerce, we're experts in performance.
Okay,
You know,
and executing.
and it was us catalyzing the work that the clients did, and they did, outstanding work to have them become people who can execute well in e-commerce. They were able to take on, like you're taking on, becoming a good speaker.
Right.
They could now see for themselves the possibility of successfully leading e-commerce, in their sector. And they were working specifically with one of their customers who was a distributor for their product online.
Okay.
And in that relationship, in like the first year, it was tens of millions of dollars of additional revenue.
Okay.
Just out of
Wow.
changing their mindset, changing, who they know themselves to be in the world of e-commerce. No longer people who only work in brick and mortar
Okay.
trying to work in e-commerce. No, these were now people who are masters of e-commerce, and they had some education to get. They needed some, practice.
Right.
And,
Okay.
mirror work to work
Right, to get to master the e-commerce business.
Yeah.
Interesting. So let's just, okay, I thought that was, that's good, because I think we're at a point in history right now where things are changing rapidly. And if you have a product or you have a service that you're delivering, that you're trying to sell, you have to be able to transform now quickly, right?
Yeah.
Because we've got AI, more globalization than before ever in history. Supply chain.
Yeah.
So you have to be able to adapt quickly. So I would say, do you have any what are tools that you would, if you got hired to come in to work for a company, to help them adapt to these changes? Like that company wanted to be masters of e-commerce because everyone buys everything online now.
Yeah.
So now how do you, now people are gonna want to know how to deal with their AI situation or whatever. So what can you tell us, what skill techniques you teach them to either identify their blind spots or change their mindset or get them, their culture to transform to reach that goal?
Again, like a number of things I
Okay.
could say. One of them is just to notice what conversations are happening. Are the people around you, are they having conversations about how AI is going to negatively affect the business? Are people having conversations about how AI is going to take their jobs? It's literally in conversation. You actually have a conversation to, change the, how they view AI coming in, or how they view, the supply chain issues. So just being really curious and viewing their organization as a network of conversations may start to shift how one interacts with the organization.
Okay, so you find conversations very powerful. You think they are definitely all the conversations being had are definitely affecting the business, the culture, and if you can go in and maybe change the conversations more positively to the way that mirror the image or mirror the vision of the company.
Yeah.
That's very impactful.
Yeah, very.
How do you identify blind spots?
Having a third party come in and do an organizational assessment. Like when we go in and we work for organizations, part of that assessment is revealing blind spots in the organization. And in this assessment, we do interviews and, a report on, what's working, what's not working.
Okay.
And that's a really powerful tool to sort of wake people up to, where the organization is going. So having a third party come in, blind spots are tricky because they're blind spots.
Right.
And And if you can start to view the situation differently, there's more of a chance of them to reveal themselves. So if you start to really take on, oh, my organization is constituted by a network of conversations, and if you start paying attention to that, things will start to be revealed out of that.
Okay, that's what reveals the blind spots.
Yeah.
Conversations are powerful, and yeah, what people are saying and everything. I have a scenario for you. So let's say there's a biotech company, it's probably like a nice size company, and they have a new product and they have a whole sales team, right? That's going out to the hospitals, trying to sell this new product that's gonna make a huge impact in let's say women's health, right? It's gonna change the game. It's gonna make a huge difference in how the patient recovers and the quality of life for, let's just say, you know, these females out there that might need this new tech product. And the sales force is getting frustrated because they go to the hospitals, like, no, we don't want to pay for anything new. We don't want it. We have no money. We don't care if it's going to make a world of difference for the patient. We're not paying for it.
Yeah.
And the sales reps talk, and they like, oh, we can't sell this product because the hospitals won't even let us in the door because they don't want to buy it. And they're like kind of negative. How would you come in and talk to like the executive team at this like company that knows they have like a breakthrough innovative product that's going to change the game in women's health, but their sales force is like down about it because they're getting blocked at the front door of the hospital and the hospital won't pay for it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I can imagine there's a lot of frustration.
Right. Amongst the sales team in this company, because they're like, what the heck?
Yeah, sure. So, first off, we would, as you go to the doctor and get before, doctor does any procedure, they check your pulse and maybe draw some blood.
Right. Wait, yeah.
That's what, we do in our interview report. So we would really reveal what's happening there. What are people's sentiment? What are people really thinking about, the whole situation, the whole really being stopped at the door. We go into an organization and we do an assessment. We actually find out, what's actually happening with people on the ground. What's actually the source of, this frustration. And we work with those people to view the situation differently. So part of the reveal, and then what's called the unhook. So you're unhooking from the old ways of working, from the old conversations you have, and then you invent. So you're inventing a new conversation. I don't know, it could be a conversation where they're going direct to customers with this product.
Okay.
If they think it's so great. Or maybe, they view the situation differently and sell the product internationally or to different markets.
Right. Okay.
Or come up with a brand new way of doing something. Often when we're working with somebody, and I find this in myself also, that I know what to do. And once I know what to do, every other option of what else to do kind of collapses around me. So I'm working on a project in my backyard right now, doing some landscaping, and I know what to do. And then my wife will come out and she will say, like, how about you do it this way? And it makes way more sense. But because I approached the project knowing what to do, other possibilities were unavailable to me.
Right. Okay.
They were, in my blind spot. So it's supporting the organization, supporting the sales team, supporting the executives in creating new possible ways of being and acting, creating new possibilities for the future in which they get so excited about that they start to take action on those new possibilities.
So basically it would reframe like you said, the conversation, that all the sales reps are having, because if you have a bunch of sales reps having conversations, that's really is the culture of the company, right? Because they're all talking and that's creating a vibe, for lack of a better word, about what everyone's doing, and it can affect performance. So
there's a joke where two shoe salesmen go down to the Bahamas and they get off the airplane and and they're, walking around, and they go up to the beach, and one shoe salesman, looks around, and, nobody's selling shoes.
Mhm.
So he goes, gets on the phone and says, "Hey, I'm coming home. No one here wears shoes." And then the other shoe salesman looks around, nobody's wearing shoes, runs to the phone and says, "Hey, send me all the inventory. No one here is wearing shoes."
Uh,
So it's that transformation of context
mhm.
that makes a really big difference in, how people act. Again, that arises in conversation, and the conversations you're having. One conversation was, no one here wears shoes, so there's no market. And the other conversation is, no one here wears shoes.
Yeah.
Everybody needs shoes.
There's a big market here.
Yeah.
Lots of opportunity. Okay. So would you say that your experience in the military being under like high pressure, and you actually, whether or not you performed, would someone, potentially die, right? You had to be it.
Yeah.
So you think that level of like scrutiny and stress to perform kind of taught you about how to motivate people or why they execute on
It definitely shapes, what I consider a real emergency.
okay.
And it also really helped me in seeing the world differently, and having to think through problems in a really creative way.
Okay.
We were doing an exercise where we needed to get into a house to get into a patient. And at the beginning of the exercise, we had to go through the window, or either go through the door. And then those were, going through the
Interesting.
exercise, those were blocked off. And, at first I thought, oh, then we can't get into the house.
Right.
There's no windows, no doors. Well, actually, we can go through the wall. We can go through the ceiling. We can go through the vents. So there were a lot of other options available for us if we, I hate this term, thought outside the box.
Right. Okay.
But that really is the word you use.
Okay, so you took your experience with that, and then under the philosopher, you kind of, learned his organizational habits and systems and what he was doing. And I'm like so curious, like I'd love to be called a philosopher. Just how do you get that title? So what, you brought your experience from that into this new company, and now you're really trying to help people break through and actually execute on their visions, which, it's hard. A lot of people don't do it and they fail. And there's actually a lot of interesting, I've experienced in the medical device industry and biotech. There's a lot of really good products that can help people, but it's really kind of up to the sales force team. Like they have that much power, and if they can't sell it, the company's not going anywhere because there's no money to give the investors, and et cetera, et cetera. We all know the story. So, I mean, if you can't get the sales team to execute, or the management team to figure out how to get them to execute, there's really amazing things sitting on the sidelines, not helping people. So
yeah,
I found it fascinating that if you were to come into some of these companies and like change what the conversation is, and which is I never put so much importance on conversation. So very interesting. Change that, you can kind of change the whole dynamic. And
you change how the organization, you change how the situation, you change how, your customers and the people you're trying to sell to, you can change how they occur for you.
right.
And you can change it in a way that's empowering for you.
Right.
You can change it in a way that, have them, be excited about, what you're up to.
Energy level needs to increase.
I would say the conversation needs to change.
Okay.
And then that will drive the energy.
Okay. So this is so fascinating. So where do you go from here? Like where are your performance limits? Like what are your goals?
Well, for myself, we're talking about blind spots.
Okay.
For myself, how I find my blind spots is I have a coach.
Okay.
And that person is very effective in revealing to me my own blind spots. And, with a coach, I'm able to very quickly increase the level of my own performance. So, having that, structure really, really supports me in, taking myself up to the next level.
Okay.
Also, I've got to manage my own conversation about, my clients, about what's
Okay.
possible in the future for my career,
Okay.
and manage it in a way where, I stay empowered, I stay excited.
I love that. I would agree. I have to do the same thing.
All right, great.
I'm working on it. It's good. What do you think is like a breakthrough industry for the United States? Like, we have so much innovation here. Do you have any comments on like where you see the future of like the US innovation going?
Well, one thing is, the US is leading the world in artificial intelligence.
Okay.
We've got, over twice the amount of significant AI models than,
Wow.
the rest of the world combined. And what myself and my colleagues are really taking a look at is, AI can do really powerful things. But what is the combination of AI and human being? So AI still can't do some really amazing things that only human beings can do.
Okay.
And that's lead, and that's empower, that's designing conversations. So what is kind of that Goldilocks area? What is that spot where we can harness AI and everything that a human can, bring to the situation?
Interesting. Still developing.
Yes, it is.
Yes. No answer yet.
No.
Okay. Yeah, I'm fascinated to see if AI, to look at it more positively, it can help, and it could help people feel like, oh, it's going to take jobs and people aren't going to have jobs, but it can also help elevate people's jobs and make their jobs even better, and they perform better.
Well, it's also going to create jobs as well.
Right.
I was looking at a statistic yesterday that, yes, it is going to take a significant number of jobs away, but it's going to, in the end, provide something like 12 million additional jobs by, I think, 2035 or so.
Okay, that's amazing.
Yeah.
So it's not all doomsday from some of these people. Again, the conversation.
Yeah, because
the shift. Yeah.
Because what it does is it empowers people. So you now have, a whole bunch of people now being empowered, given how quickly they can get data, how they can get knowledge, at their fingertips.
So you work with a lot of large companies that are doing really big, innovative things. How would you help like a small company or small business owners, or I guess privately held business owners that are trying to really, move the dial in their field?
Well, I would actually say that, I know a lot of small companies that are up to big things.
Okay.
So I was just at the Fortune Brainstorm Health Conference earlier this week. And there are entrepreneurs that are, creating medical devices, that are creating, new services here in the States that we've never had before for, healthcare. And although those organizations are small, the possibility of them growing into a large organization or having a really big impact on, our, society and how, health is managed could be really big.
Okay, I like it. Well, you have any questions for me?
No, it was, wonderful to spend the afternoon with you.
I know, I'm so interested in what you're talking about, and I think that it can help a lot of people if they just take the time to, like you said, figure out what the culture is, what the conversations are having, and how it's affecting their performance to execute on their vision. And my biggest takeaway is probably, I like the conversation part that you talked about, like what conversation, like, I don't know, you never hear people say, like, emphasize the conversations people are having, or like the teams are having, or the sales people at the company are having. So
yeah,
I think that's pretty powerful. So thank you.
Great, you're welcome.
Yeah, this was wonderful.
You got it.
If you've enjoyed today's episode, please consider subscribing to the Business Talk podcast and leaving us a review on your favorite podcast platform. Your feedback helps us grow and improve. Thank you for joining us today. This has been another episode of Business Talk with Meghan McNulty.